Hi, this is Maria from Emo Gifts, partnering with Middle Country Public Library to bring you a quick tutorial on how to use your sewing machine. Today, we're going to go over basic functions, how to thread your machine, and how to wind your bobbin. We're also going to go over how to load your bobbin, which is very important and a question I always get asked. So welcome to Sewing 101. Don't forget to follow Middle Country Public Library on social media. And please, if you like this video and found it useful, like it here on YouTube and share it with the world. Don't forget to consult your owner's manual for any questions regarding your particular machine. Today we're just going to go over general overviews, and really if you have questions about your particular machine, just consult your owner's manual. It'll be your best friend. All right, let's get started. Okay, today we are going to be using a basic brother model. This is a Project Runway limited edition. It is an older model, so it has no bells and whistles. It's got 0 frills. So really it is very, very basic. And one thing to keep in mind is that this is a side loading machine, meaning that the bobbin loads from the front of the machine. If your machine is a top loading bobbin, please consult your user manuals on how to load your bobbin. We're also going to be using a foot pedal to run this machine. So if you're using a machine that is a digital machine and you will not be using a foot pedal, this is not the tutorial for you. That's going to be a completely separate tutorial, and really the mechanical machine and the digital machines are completely different from each other. So definitely keep that in mind. But please stay tuned and just go over with us all these basic little functions that we have going on. So right now I'm showing you your foot pedal. It's going to run your machine. It makes your needle go up and down, and that's really all you need to know about that. The next thing that I'm going to show you is the power button. I know it's very basic, but either way, here it is. This one is located on the side of my machine, but some of them are located in the back. Right below it, you should also see your power cord. Now, your power cord is divided in 2 cables, one going to your foot pedal and one going to your power source. The other thing to keep in mind about your foot pedal is that depending on the pressure that you put on it is going to make your machine go faster or slower. So just keep that in mind. Okay, and we're going to start up here in the top. This is your spool pin. It just holds your spool of thread. And really it just goes up and down depending on the size of what spool you're using. You're going to adjust that. In front of it, you're going to see the bobbin winder, which holds the empty bobbin to wind. Now, it does click from left to right. On the right position, it really just signals your machine that you're going to be winding the bobbin. When you put it to the left, it signals your machine that you're okay to go ahead and sew as you normally would with your top thread. Now, this diagram right here is essentially there to guide you on how to wind your bobbin. So you're going to see it right here as well. It's the dashed line for your bobbin and the solid line for your top thread. Okay, next up is this little metal piece right here, and this is your thread guide. So that's the first step in threading your machine, whether it's your main thread or it is your bobbin. You're going to use that thread guide as the first step in threading. It's very important not to skip that step. Now, the next thing that I'm going to show you is our thread take-up lever. Now, as you see, I'm pointing to it right here. It's inside your machine, and it's this metal piece that moves up and down as I move the hand wheel. And that actually guides your thread up and down while you're sewing. Next thing is the upper tension control dial. And you guessed it, it just controls the tension of your top or upper thread. If the tension is too high, decrease the tension to a lower number. If the tension is too low, you will increase it by moving the knob to a higher number. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that different materials and different projects require different tensions. So do consult your instructions and your user manual to get a pinpoint on what tension to use. Now, the next thing here is the presser foot and the presser foot holder. Now, the presser foot clicks into the presser foot holder. And really what the presser foot does is that it applies consistent pressure onto the fabric as you're sewing. Now, as you see here, there's a button in the back, and that releases your presser foot. Now, there's different types of presser foots, and your machine might come with different types too. So this one in particular is a universal foot. I use it for straight stitches and zigzag stitches. And then right here is my zipper foot, and this foot is, you guessed it, for zippers. Your machine might come with it, it might not, but these kind of feet you can always purchase at your local store, and they all function in the same way where you click them into the presser foot holder. I'm going to show you that again. It just, you line up the foot with the holder, and then you use the presser foot lever to lower the holder to click in the presser foot. And we're going to take it out again by pressing the button in the back. Now, this little rod right here is what actually clicks into the holder, and you can see there is a little notch right here, and that's where it fits in. It's kind of like a little puzzle piece. And that's where you're going to make sure it's going to align when you're lining everything up. And you're going to make sure that it clicks in. I like to hear it click in because it just assures me that it's in place and I'm ready to sew. Now, the other thing I'd like to mention about the presser foot holder is that it's being held onto the machine by this screw right here. And you can take out the holder and place it with another type of holder, or sometimes you don't need it at all. But it depends on the project and what you're going to be using it for. The next thing is the flatbed attachment. Some machines have a compartment or a space to store your accessories. It sometimes comes with a pouch or with a little case where you're just going to store seam rippers, bobbins, needles, bead attachments, and it also is a gateway to your bobbin compartment. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. Usually attaches to the front of your machine. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is the needle and the needle clamp screw. So the needle clamp screw holds the needle in place, and your machine usually comes with a little type of screwdriver, kind of like this one. And all you do is just loosen the screw to take out that needle. Now, I like to put a piece of fabric under there just so my needle doesn't accidentally fall into the mechanism down there. But regarding the needles, there's so much to know about them, but the real takeaway here is that you should have a new needle every project you start, and you should exchange it for a new one every 10 working hours or so. Now, to put your needle back in, you just put it in the slot that it was before, and you just tighten the screw with your little screwdriver, and you're done. Now, this guy right here is our presser foot lever, and as I showed you before, it does move your presser foot holder and actual foot up and down. So in the down position, it's going to secure your fabric. It won't let it go anywhere. It won't let it move. And when it's up, you can go ahead and remove your fabric, and you're free to finish your project. All right, next up is our feed dogs. Now, the feed dogs are right under the presser foot, and they're these little jagged teeth-looking things. And what they do is that they feed the fabric through the machine as the needle goes up and down. There's no need to pull or push the fabric. Really doing so might cause damage to the needle, to your fabric. It might throw your machine off balance. So there's really no need for that. Those little jagged teeth are there to grasp the fibers of your fabric and move them along ever so nicely with the timing of your machine. So as you see right here, as you move your needle down, the feed dogs go down with it. And that's just going to go ahead and start moving your fabric to move the stitches along. The other thing you'll see here is this big metal plate. Now that metal plate actually has a name, and it's a stitch plate. The stitch plate has grooves on it that really help you with the seam allowances, and it really guides you with what kind of seam allowance you want. This particular plate goes in 1/4 inch increments, but different plates come with different measurements. It depends on your machine. And the cool thing about the stitch plates is that there are different types of stitch plates depending on what your project is and what kind of stitching you're going to use. Like if you're going to use some really cool decorative stitching, you might need to change your stitch plate. So that's something to keep in mind. Usually when you do have a lot of decorative stitches or specialty stitches, the stitch plate does interchange, but usually that's more with the more advanced machines that have lots and lots of stitches. Now we're going to go ahead and move along to the front of our machine. Now, like I said, this machine has no frills, no bells and whistles. So really the big knobs that I'm going to show you right now are this stitch length knob, and that's this guy right here. And you see that it goes 0 and F. That 0 and F are actually special types of stitches that are going to be for like your buttonholes or for sewing with satin. It really just doesn't move your fabric along, so you're going to actually move the fabric as opposed to the feed dogs doing that. The other thing is that the stitches go from 1 through 4 on this particular machine, and really what you need to know is that the higher the number, the longer the stitch. So on this sample, you're going to see that I start with very tight stitches. They're very, very close together, and that's because there's a lower number on the dial. So the lower the number, the shorter the stitch, and the more stitches you have per inch. As I moved the dial up in setting, you see that my stitches got longer and longer. This one right here was done with the number 4, and it was the longest for my particular machine. So that just means that there's going to be less stitches per inch as I sew my project. The second knob that I'm going to show you is the width adjustment knob, which basically moves your stitches to be either narrower or wider. When it's in the 0 setting for my particular machine, it just allows it to do the straight stitch only. But as I move the number up, it's going to really make the difference on how narrow or wider my stitches are going to be. So right here on the sample, I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. So on the 0 setting, I did the straight stitch, and then I moved it on to the number 1, which kind of gave me this wavy type of stitch. It's not too wide, it's not too narrow, it's just, kind of the middle of the way. But it's, it's still considered a zigzag stitch. This other stitch right here was done with 3 and then with the 4. And those, as you can see, there's a big difference in how wide the peaks and valleys of my stitch are. So it does make a difference when you go ahead and turn that dial. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to thread our main thread, or the top thread of our machine. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, there's diagrams up here. The dashed line is for the bobbin, and the solid line is for the main thread. So the important thing to note here is that you're going to go ahead and take the thread from your spool and follow it through the thread guide. Now the thread guide has this little hook in it where your thread must go through in order to thread your machine correctly. So I'm going to show you that right now. So you see I'm following the diagram, and you see that right there, that's the little hook that we need to have our thread hook onto. So that's step number 1. And then we're going to go and follow this little ridge right here, and we're going to go down under the tension knob or tension dial, and then we're going to go up and over our take-up lever. Okay, once it's up and over the take-up lever, we're just going to follow that ridge down. And we're going to go down for where our needle clamp screw is. And you see that little, I guess, little hook thing there. You're going to hook your thread right through that. Okay, and then you're ready to thread your needle. So you're always going to thread your needle from front to back. That's always the rule of thumb, front to back. And then once you're done, you're ready to clip the tail end of your thread. Now, to clip the tail end of the thread, some machines do have a thread cutter on the side of the machine. This particular machine doesn't. So if yours doesn't either, I would just recommend to cut it about 4 inches away from the machine. That way your tail end isn't too long, as so it would get, tangled in as you sew. And it won't be too short that it'll go back up into the mechanism and cause some other type of tangle in there. And that is it for the top thread. Now we're going to go ahead and thread the bobbin. Now the bobbin is a lot easier than you might think. You just follow the dashed diagram with a dashed line, and instead of going through the thread guide, what you're going to do is you're going to go around that little circle that's on top of the thread guide. You're going to start with your bobbin into the right position. So you're going to click it all the way to the right, your winder. And then you're going to take your thread and you're going to follow the diagram. And I like to go around my bobbin about 6 or 8 times in a clockwise motion before starting. And then I just press my lever and go ahead and wind my bobbin. Okay, and once you're done, you just clip your thread and you click your winder to the left and you just release your bobbin. Now, if there are any ripples or any bulging in the bobbin thread itself, that just means that there's something went wrong in winding the bobbin, so you're going to have to redo it. But this one looks pretty good and it's ready to be loaded into the machine. Now, to load your bobbin, again, the bobbins are very intimidating, but they're not as bad as they might seem. So to take out your bobbin casing from the compartment, you're just gonna pull on the latch and you're gonna pull that guy out. And you're gonna see that's the compartment where the bobbin will go into. The other thing to look at here is that you have a little notch right there, a metal plate, and then you have a slot. And you're gonna guide your thread through the notch under the plate onto the slot. Okay, and I'm gonna show you that right now. So you're going to hold your bobbin with your right hand like a backwards P with the tail end on the left. I'm just going to insert it into the bobbin casing. Now as you hold it, you're going to guide your thread through the notch, under the metal plate, and into the slot. And that's all there is to that. Now, the other important part is putting your casing back into the compartment. Now, this little notch right here in the compartment needs to line up with that metal stick on the bobbin casing itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull that latch again and very carefully just put it back in and then release the notch. Now the next step is to go ahead and pick up the thread from the bobbin. So we're going to hold the top thread with your left hand tightly, and then with your right hand you're going to move the hand wheel towards you a couple of times and pick up the thread. So as you can see here, it just picked it up and I am ready to go, and I can take just a pair of scissors, a pen, a pencil, and just go ahead and clean that up and make sure that's all set. Now I'm going to show you that again. Now my bobbin's already in the casing, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that latch towards me, and then make sure that that little stick is in the notch of the compartment and it's not going to move. That's very important. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and with my left hand, I'm going to hold the top thread tightly, and with my right hand, move the hand wheel towards me. And after a couple of times, the thread is going to come up through the feed dogs. And there you have it. With anything that you have, a scissor or anything like that, you can go ahead and just take it out completely. And you're all set to go. And that is how you load your bobbin. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, go ahead, like it, share it, make some comments, ask the questions, and we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you again for watching and joining us. Again, this is Maria from Emu Gifts, partnering with Middle Country Public Library for the sewing tutorial. Don't forget to follow Middle Country Public Library on Instagram and Facebook. And of course, if you'd like to follow me as well, I'm on social media too. So thank you again and have a great day. And that's Tantor.